Thousands of people rallied in Burkina Faso's capital, Ouagadougou, on Wednesday in support of transitional President Captain Ibrahim Traoré. They were angry over remarks made by the head of United States' military in Africa, General Michael Langley. Earlier this month, he accused Traoré of using the country's mining resources to benefit the junta instead of the people.
Je parle aux prédateurs.
The American general, and especially the predators, should stop lying. Burkina Faso is not against anyone, but we will no longer tolerate looting. The general is a liar. We own it, we use it whenever we want, and sell it to whomever we want. If they want to eliminate Captain Traoré, they should eliminate the people first. What we experienced in the 1987 assassination will not be repeated. What happened to Captain Sankara will not happen to Captain Traoré. We will go all the way to defend our president. The rally comes days after the military authorities said they'd uncovered what they described as a plot to overthrow the government. Several members of parliament attended the gathering, including Prime Minister Jean-Emmanuel Ouedraogo. The time has come to never again kneel before the world. May the people of Burkina Faso free themselves once and for all, and may the people of the Sahel free themselves permanently. Let Africans and freedom fighters in the rest of the world stand up, because the fight will go on until victory. Demonstrators came from across the country in what was the biggest show of support for the junta since Traoré seized power in a September 2022 coup.
Shalom. First and foremost, call Allah Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai Ba'ashem Rakakadash. Double honors to the apostles, elders, and bishops of the great millstone who to rule and teach well. Peace and blessings, Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai Barakatham, to the sincere believers, the hopefully elect, sincere Akim and Akwath out there listening, learning, keeping the faith and diligence of our Lord Yahushai, occupying the prophecies and faith until all is fulfilled, and Lord will, we are redeemed. So back in the news, and this topic right here has been on my spirit for a few days, but I didn't really have time to tap into it, but through the spirit we'll touch on this today. So if you've been watching prophecy, tapping into world events and things of that nature, especially over the last 2.5 years since the whole situation that's been happening in the land of Gaza with the small hats and how big that's blew up on the world stage, then you can see clearly that the Lord is shaking things up amongst these nations in the earth. And our Lord Yahushai told us that in the last days, the sign of his coming would be that nation will rise against nation, that there would be wars and rumors of wars all over the place. And these are the things that we're seeing. So these things directly correlate to the end of this current age, the time of the Gentiles, the end of Esau's world, as it is outlined in 2 Ezra 6 and 9, for Esau is the end of the world and Jacob is the beginning of it that followeth. All these things that we're seeing, pretty much the wicked being put on Front Street as the devil is happening. All right. And this is all the will of Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai. So right now in Africa, you have the nation of Burkina Faso, Ghana, Ivory Coast, and many others. It really is the whole of Africa. I mean, we've been seeing South Africa over the past decade reclaim back the country from those Boer Edomites that came in and encroached on the land. They had the apartheid system for many years down there, and they still benefit off of the apartheid. All right, but what's happening now is that those so-called white farmers, Edomites, are being kicked out. Their lands are being taken, their subsidies are being stripped from them, because it was all passed down from generational inheritances through ill-gotten gain. All right. So now the Lord is taking away the substance that they have, and many of them are mourning. But across the whole of Africa, you see this trend, and it's especially even more pronounced now because many of these African nations have the backing from Russia, which this is a very strategic move from Russia because Russia knows that the EU, the NATO nations, which is a part of the beast system, with America being the head of it, that they receive pretty much all of their wealth from the resources of Africa. All right, because Africa is really the only continent on Earth that doesn't have to import anything from anywhere. They have everything there already. But what you've had during the age of colonialism, you've had these European powers, France, Britain, Germany, Italy, come in and pretty much divide the African nations against one another through this colonialism and wars and setting up puppet leaders and things like that to where Africa could never really get ahead, right? But as we'll get into in this lesson today, there's a new generation of leadership in Africa that is saying no more. We're not going to allow the West to just completely, strip us of all our resources and wealth while they get rich and fat and while our people starve and have nothing. All right, because the younger generation of rulership in these countries have now come to understand that our past leaders have really sold us out, and they didn't really care about the people. You know what I'm saying? Because many of them were puppet leaders, but the ones that really were about the people, really were about their nations, what happened to them? They were offed. All right. A prime example is Muammar Gaddafi. All right, which Muammar Gaddafi was pretty much doing the same thing that Ibrahim Traoré, president of Burkina Faso, is doing now. And look what happened to him. He was demonized by the UN. They lied on the man, said that he was putting acid on his own people, that he was killing, deleting his own people and things like that, when there was no such thing going on. But it was all a smear campaign for Esau to go in and do what he always do. Matter of fact, we'll just get this right here. Started off like this. John chapter 10. Right, the thief, Yahweh shall say what? John chapter 10 in verse 10, it says, the thief cometh not but for to steal and to kill and to destroy. I am come that they might have life and that they might have it more abundantly. See, so Yahweh Shah said the thief, which the thief is Esau, the so-called white man. Okay, collectively the West, America, Britain, France, Spain, Portugal, those countries, man, which make up the modern day NATO and the EU. All right, these nations, all right, when they came back into power in the 1400s during the time of the Renaissance, they went out, they colonized and rebuilt the desolate places as it is written. All right, but at the end, the Lord said what? That he will throw down. They will build, but I will throw down. So Esau's whole government set up, his whole hegemony on the earth is currently being overthrown. All right. So this is all the doing of the Lord, man. But hey, Yahweh Shai say that the thief cometh not before to steal, to kill, and to destroy. And when you look at these Edomites' track record of what they've done in their history since they've came back into power, really when they first got into power with Alexander the Greek, that's all that they was doing. All right, stealing, deleting, and destroying. That's all that they do. And they always play the victim. They always say, oh, we have to defend ourselves. Look, you can just look at what's going on with the small hats in the land as a prime example, as a microcosm of what they've done worldwide to all nations. You see, and this is why now there is a, shameful spewing upon the glory of Esau. This is why he's greatly despised. Let's go to Obadiah. Because the Lord has made these Edomites, greatly despised among the heathen. Obadiah 1 in verse 1. And this is the humbling of Edom, right? Because this nation of people here is the most proud. Okay, they really, the leadership of the Edomites, but even down to the lower level Edomite, because they also have a God complex. You see, But mainly speaking about their elites, they have this God complex to where they can do no wrong, they can't be reproved, just anything they do is right. And anybody that speaks against them or comes up against them, they got to be demonized or they got to be taken out, you know? And that's extreme pride right there. So this is Obadiah 1 and 1, the vision of Obadiah. Thus saith the Lord Yahweh concerning Edom. We have heard a rumor from the Lord, and an ambassador is sent among the heathen. Arise ye, and let us rise up against her in battle. So the Lord has slaughter, okay, great judgment apportioned for Edom, and when you read in the Zondervan Bible Dictionary, it tells you in there that Edom, that the Edomites feature prominently in last days judgment. So there's a great judgment prescribed for the nation of Edom here in these last days. Verse 2, it says, Behold, I have made thee small among the heathen, thou art greatly despised. See? So Esau is greatly despised among the nations. Why? Because he's done the most evil. He's literally, as we just read in John chapter 10, all right, he has done nothing but steal, kill, and destroy. That's all that they've done throughout their whole history. That's all that it's filled with. All right. So now we can go here. All right. Because this Italian prime minister, Giorgia Meloni, right, delivered a powerful and fiery speech exposing France's ongoing economic imperialism in Africa. And France is one of the main colonial powers that are responsible for depleting these African nations of their wealth. All right. Because many, when you go back into the history, many of these African nations, especially in Western Africa, right, which a lot of those jakes over there, Ghana, Nigeria, Sierra Leone, Ivory Coast, a lot of those nations are jakes over there, you know what I'm saying? And they were victims of colonialism, you know what I'm saying? So she's about to pretty much, tell you, hey, France is one of the main reasons why these African nations can't have anything, all right? But the tide is changing. So let's check this out.
Si chiama franco CFA. È la moneta coloniale che la Francia stampa per 14 nazioni africane, alle quali applica il signoraggio e in forza delle quali sfrutta le risorse di questa nazione. Questo è un bambino che lavora in una miniera d'oro in Burkina Faso. Il Burkina Faso è una delle nazioni più povere del mondo. Per il Burkina Faso, che ha l'oro, la Francia stampa moneta coloniale. In cambio pretende che finiscano nelle casse del tesoro francese il 50% di tutto quello che il Burkina.
You see? So France has demanded that 50% of everything that Burkina Faso exports ends up in the French treasury. So after taxes, after different other things that they have to pay, how much money is Burkina Faso actually bringing into their nation? Virtually nothing. All right, they may be fortunate to even get 30% of what they export because France and the West is taking everything else. Which mainly we're dealing with France here because France colonialized Burkina Faso. All right, but hey, she's telling you that look, these African nations are so poor because the West has been robbing them for centuries. All right, and in the 60s, when these nations so-called got their independence, really all that meant was that France or whoever, they weren't the official heads of state. All right, France pretty much let these nations, put their own leaders, or so-called put their own leaders, you know what I'm saying, but your puppet leaders in the stead of government. You know what I'm saying? They're able to pretty much run their own affairs, but they still have to answer to France, all right? They still have to answer to Britain or Italy or whoever, whatever colonial power that it is, Spain, all right? So that's what she's going into, all right? And this is the Lord, pretty much making these nations, right? Psalm 64 and verse 8. Psalm 64 and 8. So they shall, you know what, let's start at verse 6. Psalm 64 and 6. They search out iniquities, they accomplish a diligent search, both the inward thought of every one of them and the heart is deep. But Yahweh shall shoot at them with an arrow, suddenly shall they be wounded. So they shall make their own tongue to fall upon themselves, and all that see them shall flee away. And all men shall fear and shall declare the work of Yahweh, for they shall wisely consider his doing. All right, so the Lord is making this to where, he's putting a spirit on these certain leaders in these Western governments. This has been happening for many years, man, but now that we're closer to the end, more information is starting to come out. People can't hold it in no more. And ultimately, like I say, there's a spirit on people due to the climate that's within the earth right now to just bring things out. Because all the hypocrisy that's happening with the small hats in the land and how they like to scream anti-Sem anytime someone speaks against them, or that they say that, oh, we're fighting Hamas and this and that, but it's really about oil and resources and contracts. It's all BS. So their own people are exposing them before the world. All right. So this speaks to the times that we're in. Let's continue.
Burkina Faso esporta. L'oro che questo bambino si infila in un cunicolo per tirare fuori finisce per lo più nelle casse dello Stato francese. Allora la soluzione non è prendere gli africani e spostarli in Europa. La soluzione è liberare l'Africa da certi europei che la sfruttano e consentire a queste persone di vivere di quello che hanno. Questo?
Yo, she was fired up. Hey, a lot of them Italians are Jakes too. You know what I'm saying? She might be a Jake. Who knows? But the point is, you even have these European nations that are calling out the hypocrisy. All right, which this shows you that Esau is divided. Okay, it shows you that Esau is divided, man, because Italy is calling out France for colonialism. You know what I'm saying? So these Edomites, let's get that house divided. Let's see. Put Stan Salakia. Satan be divided. Luke 11. Luke 11:17. But he, knowing their thoughts, said unto them, every kingdom divided against itself is brought to desolation, and a house divided against a house falleth. If Satan also be divided against himself, how shall his kingdom stand? Because ye say that I cast out devils through Beelzebub. They was pretty much calling Yahushai, that he was a demon, basically. What I'm saying? That he was the king of the demons because he was casting out demons. But he pretty much said to them, look, why would Satan cast out Satan? If I was truly a devil and I was doing this thing by the power of devils, wouldn't I put more demons on people? And it's, that's why Yahushua say, if Satan cast out Satan, how then can his kingdom stand? All right, so it doesn't make sense, all right, for the devil to be against himself, all right? Only righteousness can truly be against evil, man, which Yahushua was. But it's the same thing you have here, man. You have Satan divided against Satan, Esau against Esau, all right, which this shows you that his kingdom is on the way out. That they really can't agree. They really can't unify. The world is seeing these Edomites for who they truly are, and this is why now, Esau, they try to throw each other under the bus pretty much. Now I want to get, let's go right here. Check this out. So did you know that France has been holding the national reserves of the following African countries since 1961: Benin, Burkina Faso, Guinea-Bissau, Ivory Coast, Mali, Niger, Senegal, Togo, Cameroon, Central African Republic, Chad, Congo, Brazzaville, Equatorial Guinea, and Gabon. France collects $500 billion a year from these 14 African countries for colonial taxes, and if they don't pay, the president is deleted or the government is overthrown. And we've seen that happen. Okay, so with Burkina Faso, you got this dude, Ibrahim Traoré, which I believe that he's a Jake. You know what I'm saying? Um, Ibrahim is believe it's Arabic for Abraham. You know what I'm saying? And like I said, a lot of those, Western African countries are actually Jakes. You know what I'm saying? But you had in 1987 with what was his name? Sant Sankafa, something like that, where he was pretty much doing what Gaddafi was doing. You know what I'm saying? And they ended up taking him out. They pretty much lied on him, said that he was violating human rights and this and that. And you know what happened next? They came in, took him out, and set up a puppet leader. All right, so this is what the West does when they can't get their way. It says France is indebting and enslaving Africans by means of Africa's own wealth. They would probably be a third world. No, they would be a third world country if it wasn't for the wealth that they're getting out of these African nations, and that's facts. Because Europe doesn't have any resources. Europe doesn't have any natural resources to where they can sustain themselves. This is why they go all around the world and rob and exploit these other nations, man, because they don't have it. All right. They would probably be a third world country without these African nations. Let's go here as well. Check this out, right? Because look, there's a revolution that's happening within the continent of Africa right now, and it's being backed by Russia and China, to pretty much cripple the West. That's why I said before that this is a very strategic move from Vladimir Putin and Xi Jinping, right? Because they're in Africa. And see, the thing about Russia, even though they're Edomites as well, the thing about Russia is, the Lord has put a spirit on them to deal more fairly, to deal more fairly with these African nations. You know what I'm saying? They're actually cutting deals. Russia's coming in and they're saying, hey, we'll give you, military equipment, we'll give you this and that if you give us gold and XYZ. And they're like, okay, well, we can work with that, because it's mutually beneficial. See, what the West is doing is the West is take, and the African nations, they don't get anything, so they lose at the end. But working with Russia and China, the BRICS, these African nations are actually starting to improve their infrastructure, improve their economies. Wealth is starting to come back into these nations, and the people are starting to benefit, man. Right? Because you look over there in some of them African nations, I mean, them people live dirt poor. While you look at France and London, even though those are shitholes really when you go into it, man. Streets are dirty, you got all kind of pollution and stuff like that. But it's these places are put out there as the apex of civilization. You know what I'm saying? But Ghana's new president, John Mahama, has banned foreigners from local gold trading. All right, so if you're not pretty much, he said foreigners, but pretty much he's banning the West, okay, and banning those European NATO nations. You know what I'm saying? Now, if you're an African nation that is down with doing business with Ghana, then they'll trade with you, but they're kicking out the West, you see. So these are the things that you have going on. Now check this out, right? 'Cause this is biblical prophecy right here. It says Russia has reportedly sent special forces trained with unique skills to Burkina Faso, with explicit instructions from President Putin to safeguard the presidency of Burkina Faso, as well as Captain Ibrahim Traoré. This development comes at a time when Western powers, led by France, have converged in Ivory Coast to strategize on an invasion of Burkina Faso, alleging that Captain Ibrahim Traoré has exploited Burkina Faso's gold for personal interests. you see, so this is the hypocrisy of Esau, man. All right, here it is. These people got their own resources. They got, they can do what they want with their resources, but you got France coming in saying that, oh, Ibrahim Traoré, he's exploiting Burkina Faso gold for their own personal interest. Well, who the hell are you? It's their gold. They're mining it. They can do what they want with it. Who are you to come in and tell them that they don't have a right to do so? You know? And this is what these Edomites do because they feel as though the whole earth belongs to them. All right? And if they can't have access to resources, then you got to go. And there was just the reason why Russia did this because there was just a coup attempt. So they tried to take this guy out a few weeks ago. So now Russia has come in and said, you know what, we're going to protect you from the West. You know what I'm saying? So, hey, this is biblical prophecy, man. Let's go to Ezekiel 38. Ezekiel the 38th chapter, because, the Lord pretty much put it on these nations' spirit to be a guard. Let's start from the top. Prophecy about Gog and future invasion of Israel. Ezekiel 38 and verse 1. And the word of the Lord came unto me, saying, Son of man, set thy face against Gog, the land of Magog, the chief prince of Meshech and Tubal, and prophesy against him. Now Gog and Magog goes into Russia. All right, the chief prince of Meshech and Tubal, goes into Turkey. Okay, and prophesy against him. So the Lord is against these nations, but he's using them to fulfill his word. All right, verse 3. And say, Thus saith the Lord Yahweh, behold, I am against thee, O Gog. So he's against Russia, the chief prince of Meshech and Tubal, and I will turn thee back and put hooks into thy jaws, and I will bring thee forth, and all thine army, horses and horsemen, all of them clothed with all sorts of armor, even a great company with bucklers and shields, all of them handling swords. Now check this out right here. Verse 5. Persia, Ethiopia, and Libya with them. Now all you got to do is Google Persia, Ethiopia, and Libya BRICS, and you'll see that indeed Gog and Magog has aligned their interests unto these nations, man, just as biblical prophecy said that they would. All of them with shield and helmet, and they're also giving them military protection. Okay, biblical prophecy, man. Prophecy is jumping off the pages. Verse 6. Gomer, which is Turkey, and all his bands, the house of Togarmah of the north quarters, and all his bands, and many people with thee. So Turkey is also joined unto Russia. This is why over the years you've been seeing talks of Russia, Slovakia, of Turkey saying that they're going to join the BRICS, that they're going to leave NATO, and they're going to join with the BRICS alliance. Okay, and with this whole situation in the so-called Middle East with the small hats, they're moving towards that more and more every day. Be thou prepared, and prepare for thyself, thou and all thy company that are assembled unto thee, and be thou a guard unto them. You see that? So the Lord put it on his spirit to be a guard unto these smaller nations. Same thing with Iran. You know what I'm saying? Many of those African nations as well. Russia is guarding them, giving them military support, giving them resources, giving them aid, to stand up against the West, because Russia understands that Putin is a very strategic, war general. All right. He understands, okay, listen, he understands the power of the beast, even though Russia is a formidable superpower in their own right. All right. But he understands that, it's better to break them down, systematically break down their economies, break down their morale, break down their access to resources, and then attack. All right, which is what Russia is doing. See, they're pretty much cutting off the life force of the power of the European nations and America, which is why you see the West falling as it is right now. You look at the Western world, these Western nations, everything is going under. All right, and it's because Africa is being taken out of the equation to where they can no longer benefit from the resources. Okay, so this is all strategically, being set up, and it plays into what the Lord wants at the end of the day. All right, so Russia, Gog and Magog, as a guard to Ibrahim Traoré and these other nations that are speaking about well, not speaking, but they're actively, bucking up against the West, right? Check this out. Burkina Faso's junta leader, Ibrahim Traoré, has once again rallied his nation with defiant words and Pan-African conviction after a massive show of support in Ouagadougou on April 30th, 2025. Traoré responded with a fiery vow to resist imperialism and stand unbroken. The demonstration held at the symbolic Place de la Revolution drew thousands in a bold display of loyalty to the military government. Supporters waved national and Russian flags, chanting, "Long live Captain Traoré," and raised signs condemning Western critics. One placard featured a photo of U.S. General Michael Langley defaced with the word slave. And see, that's another thing too, man. A lot of these nations around the world are waking up, to the fact that, Jake is pretty much, a slave to Esau, man. You know what I'm saying? That Jake pretty much, because they won't send. Notice how they'll send Jake over there to Africa, because if they send a so-called white man, it's gonna be like, oh yeah, we'll see the white man came over here, and so it doesn't look good. But they'll send Jake to be like, oh yeah, well, we come in peace, we're friendly. Look, I'm one of you. You know what I'm saying? So you can trust me. That's how Esau try to play this shit. But see, it ain't working no more, man, because that. And that's why they was defacing his photo with the word slave, man, because it's like, oh, will you align yourself with the white man? So they don't respect that shit over there, man. This is why they kicking the West out, because the time is over for Esau to use his tried and true playbook. You know what I'm saying? Oh yeah, well, we gonna send our so-called black diplomats over to these lands so they can warm up to us. But no, man, people not going for your BS no more. People see right through you now. The rally came days after Burkina Faso's military claimed it had thwarted a quote major plot to depose Traoré, allegedly orchestrated from neighboring Ivory Coast. It also followed a sharp rebuke from Langley, who told a U.S. Senate committee that Traoré was exploiting the nation's gold resources to entrench the junta, sidelining the needs of the people. So, this is crazy, man. So you go over there, and you see that now Traoré, he's cutting off the West access to gold and things of that nature. So you go back and you lie. All right, you fabricate some story that President Ibrahim Traoré is a evil and wicked man because he's using the gold to benefit his nation, to benefit his people. And you call that evil, basically. All right. Oh, he's exploiting the nation's gold resources. Well, what the hell did that got to do with you? What does that have to do with America? What does that have to do with France or anybody else? They can do what they want with their resources, man. You see, so this is why I said, look, Esau, which he is in his blessing, and it was prophesied that he would have the fatness of the earth. But how would he get it? By the sword, right? Esau got all that he has by the sword, man. By going around stealing, lying, deceiving, destroying. As we read in John 10:10, the thief comes not before to steal, to kill, and to destroy. This is how Esau has gotten his power and rule, by the sword, by waging war. You know what I'm saying? Using his deception, right? Which is also a part of warfare and the sword. See? So this is just nothing but lies that's going out, okay? And it's not working, because this is what they've done for years. Check this out as well. Emmanuel Macron said to Ibrahim Traoré, "Let us build our French military bases in Burkina Faso to strengthen our friendship." The nerve of these devils, right? But check out what Traoré said. He said, "You are already friends with Britain, U.S., and Germany. Do you have your military base in their country? And the answer is no. You see, so the hypocrisy of Esau, the hypocrisy of the West, is continuing to be called out. And let's go to the book of Habakkuk, chapter 2. Because this is beautiful what's going on within the earth right now, man. Matter of fact, Salaki, let's go to Job chapter 20. Let's go to Job chapter 20 and 27. 26. All darkness shall be hid in his secret places. A fire not blown shall consume him. It shall go ill with him that is left in his tabernacle. Verse 27. The heaven shall reveal his iniquity, and the earth shall rise up against him. The increase of his house shall depart, and his goods shall flow away in the day of his wrath. This is the portion of a wicked man from Yahweh, and the heritage appointed unto him by Yahweh. You see, so this is the portion of Esau, man. Okay, right now, the increase of his house, which means that his kingdom is being broken down. Okay, he's losing his prosperity. He's losing his grip of power. All right, and he's also losing his monetary position. He's losing the resources that have made him so great, which he stole and robbed from everybody else. That's why it says, and his goods shall flow away in the day of his wrath. But as it says in 27, the heaven shall reveal his iniquity. So right now, these Edomites are being cussed out by pretty much all nations. Right? They're seeing the Edomite for who they really are. And again, it's all really the catalyst for all this has been, even though this was known a long time ago, but see, the nations were afraid to speak on Esau like that because they had that military might. See, now we're in a different day and time where many nations now have nukes. Okay, this is why they're trying to stop Iran from getting nukes, because they can't bully and control Iran like that once they get nukes. All right. So the heaven is revealing his iniquity. Esau is being exposed on a high level, even amongst his own people. And the earth shall rise up against them. All nations are preparing to come against the West, preparing to come against Esau. That's why worldwide, these Edomites are hated, man. And that hatred for them is growing more and more every day. The more that they continue to show who they really are, the more that they continue to show that they really don't give a damn about anybody that's not an Edomite, that's not of the West. All right. Now, we can go to Habakkuk chapter 2. Habakkuk chapter 2. And let's start at verse 3. For the vision is yet for an appointed time, but at the end it shall speak and not lie. Though it tarry, wait for it, because it will surely come, it will not tarry. Behold, his soul, which is lifted up, is not upright in him, but the just shall live by his faith. Yea, also because he transgresseth by wine, he is a proud man, neither keepeth at home, who enlargeth his desire as hell, and is as death, and cannot be satisfied, but gathereth unto him all nations, and heapeth unto him all people, which is what Esau has done. Okay, but he enlarges his desire as hell. He maketh the whole earth a living hell. This is why you have people now trying to run to the metaverse. Now they trying to run to virtual reality to get an escape, man, because this devil has made life, the human experience, unbearable. And that's him enlarging his desire as hell, and is as death. Everywhere this man go, he bring death with him, and he can't be satisfied, man. No matter how much that he get, he always wants more. You see, verse 6: shall not all these take up a parable against him, and a taunting proverb against him? Which is what's happening now, right? Many of these nations are exposing these Edomites and saying that, look, you're the damn devil. All right, because you've gotten everything that you have through ill-gotten gain. Okay, the stuff you have don't belong to you, but you've stolen and exploited it from other nations. All right, that's why it says, shall not these take up a parable against him, and a taunting proverb against him, and say, woe to him that increaseth that which is not his. How long? And to him that laden himself with thick clay. Okay, which means goes into heavy debt. All right, which, the West in general, especially America, is in heavy debt. All right, verse 7, shall not they rise up suddenly that shall bite thee, and awake that shall vex thee? and thou shalt be for booties unto them. Verse 8, because thou hast spoiled many nations, all the remnant of the people shall spoil thee, because of men's blood, and for the violence of the land, of the city, and of all that dwell therein. All right, so because Esau, hey, the scriptures say that whatsoever man soweth, that shall he also reap. So because Esau is gone all around the earth, he's robbed and spoiled many nations. Guess what? The scripture says in verse 7, right? Shall they not rise up suddenly that shall bite thee, and awake that shall vex thee, and thou shalt be for booties? That means when it says there shall be for booties, that means that they're gonna, Esau's gonna be a spoil unto these other nations. All right. So hey, man, that same wicked energy that Esau put out there, it's all gonna come back. And we're in that time, where it's all about to go down. Let's go down to verse 14. It says, for the earth shall be filled with the knowledge of the glory of the Lord, as the waters cover the sea. Woe unto him that giveth his neighbor drink, that puttest thy bottle to him, and makest him drunk also, that thou mayest look on their nakedness. Thou art filled with shameful glory. Drink thou also, and let thy foreskin be uncovered. The cup of the Lord's right hand shall be turned unto thee, and shameful spewing shall be on thy glory. You see that? So now there's a shameful spewing on the glory of Esau. That's why now he's trying to take down all them proud statues of Theodore Roosevelt and Christopher Columbus and all these Edomites, these so-called great Edomites that came about and that conquered. You know what I'm saying? Now he's trying to take all that down. Now he's trying to erase the history of how he's gotten what he's gotten. All right, but it's too late for that, man. See, everybody knows what you're all about, Esau. And furthermore, the Lord is putting a spirit in the earth to remember what you've done and to come against you. Verse 17, for the violence of Lebanon shall cover thee, and the spoil of beasts which made them afraid, because of men's blood, and for the violence of the land, of the city, and of all that dwell therein. So, the bottom line is, Esau's time is coming. This man don't have that much longer left to operate. You know what I'm saying? And this is why, all these nations are coming up against him. Matter of fact, let's go to Jeremiah 51. So in the spirit, Jeremiah 51, Babylon judge for the sins against Israel. Right? Jeremiah 51, and let's go down. I think it's about 31 or let's start at 30. The mighty men of Babylon have forborne to fight. They have remained in their holes. Their might hath failed. They became as women. They have burned her dwelling places. Her bars are broken. Verse 31, one post shall run to meet another, and one messenger to meet another, to show the king of Babylon that his city is taken at one end. All right, so what is about to happen to the West, man? This place is about to be invaded. You know what I'm saying? Europe is about to be invaded. America is about to be invaded. And it's about to be a great slaughter in the midst of the land. All right. Verse 32, and that the passages are stopped, and the reeds they have burned with fire, and the men of war are affrighted. 33, for thus saith the Lord of hosts, the God of Israel, the daughter of Babylon, which is America, is like a threshing floor. It is time to thresh her, yet a little while, and the time of her harvest shall come. Right? Now, what does it mean to thresh? Let's go into that word thresh there. All right. We know what it means, but for edification.
Strong's H 1869. Darach.
Darak. All right. Outline of usage: to tread, bend, lead, march. Right? to tread upon, to march forth, to tread a press, archers, bow benders, right? So yeah, basically destruction, man. All right, destruction is coming to this place. It's time for the time of threshing. All right, Babylon's gonna be like a threshing floor. And see, once Babylon, the daughter of Babylon, America falls, NATO and the EU is gonna fall as well. As a matter of fact, NATO and the EU might fall before America falls. Okay, because they're already through. You know what I'm saying? But America is the head of the beast. You know what I'm saying? America is the whore that rides the beast. You know what I'm saying? So by default, once America goes down, the rest of the beast system is gonna fall with it as well. But we seeing that the Lord is setting it up. The Lord is setting it up to where these nations are rising up. They've had enough, and now is the time for these Edomites to be taken down, man, because this is the end of their kingdom, the end of their wicked rule on the earth. So with that, Lord willing, this lesson was edifying through the Rakakadash, called Allah, Yahweh, by Hashem, Yahushai, by Hashem Rakakadash. And until next time, Lord willing, shalom to the elect, Kum Yashala, Wa Bible Ball. On to the next one, shalom.